My wife was a good wife. She was a good mom. She was an entrepreneur. She came from nothing to something.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin and welcome back to Just Thought Lounge. This is the true crime channel that delivers serious, well-balanced coverage of the cases that really make you think. On the night of the 29th of June 2017 in Palm Beach County, Florida, a masked assailant broke into the home of the Jenkins family in the early morning hours. The intruder, armed with a revolver, was not in the house for very long. But when he left, he had taken what he came for, the life of 33-year-old Makeva Jenkins. Makeva was a loving wife and mother of 3, pregnant with her 4th child. She was a successful entrepreneur and active in her church and community. Inconceivable as it seemed that anyone would wish her dead, family and friends nonetheless quickly began to speculate about what could have made the young businesswoman a target. While her husband Euri grieved and spoke openly about his loss, police began to question whether there was more to this attack than meets the eye. And after many months, they believed they had discovered the identity of the man behind the mask and his motive. Let's take a look. Makeva Jenkins lived her own version of the American dream. Her story was a rags to riches struggle full of hard work, disappointments, persistence, and finally, wealth and success. Makeva grew up in Belle Glade in Palm Beach County. She graduated from the University of South Florida with a BA in criminology and then went on to earn a master's degree in social work from Barry University in 2009. This same year, on New Year's Eve, Makeva was attending a church event and met the man that would later become her husband, Euri Jenkins. Both active in their church, the two were also in sync with their life plans. Makeva had initiative to spare, so while she launched her own small businesses, she encouraged Euri to follow his passions as well. He pursued his own business as a barber. Unfortunately, Makeva's party design business failed in 2012 alongside her nonprofit that sought to provide support services in her local community. Undeterred, Makeva founded the Prime Enterprise Group, a consulting company that supported entrepreneurial clients with business planning, coaching, mentorship, and educational webinars. She regularly held live events online where she shared her own story and offered advice to those seeking to take the leap and become their own boss.
People that know my story, they'll say, well, Makeva, you used to have a nonprofit, you used to have an event planning company, you owned a boutique. Hey, Felicia, how are you? Thank you for chiming in. I live on the edge too. Yep. So when I started, I've always written business plans for like my family and friends, but I didn't do it as a company. I was still trying to figure out what my niche was and what I wanted to do. And it was my husband that suggested I start a consulting company. And I'm like, we don't have any money for that. I'm trying to get the boutique off the ground. I was still doing event planning here and there. And I still had my nonprofit. Again, I'm pulled in so many different areas because I'm just trying to make ends meet and bring money in to help my husband pay the bills, because as well, it's not like it used to be in the past where men are the sole providers. Women get out there and hustle. They do the work and they kind of meet each other in the middle. At least that's what me and my husband do.
In 2017, Makeva was 33 years old and a mother to 3 children. Makeva and Euri had 2 children aged 7 and 1. She also had a 13-year-old daughter who was staying with her father on the night of June 29th. It was a Thursday. A 911 call brought law enforcement and emergency services to the Jenkins family home around 2 a.m. There, responders rushed upstairs to the second-level master bedroom where they found Euri distraught, holding Makeva, who had suffered a gunshot wound to the head. Paramedics tried what they could, but were unsuccessful. Present at the house was Makeva's brother, Markavius, and a friend of Euri's named Dimitri Dale. The 3 men were in the garage just before 2 a.m. where Euri had been giving Markavius a haircut, when a masked intruder forced his way through the unlocked garage door. The masked man was dressed entirely in black. He had fabric wrapped around his head and face, and he carried a loaded revolver. The men were instructed to lay down on the ground. Following these instructions, the intruder then asked them for the location of Quest, the name of Makeva's mother. The intruder indicated that he was owed money, but Quest did not live at the house and was not a frequent visitor. Confused and attempting to explain, the men were then ushered inside the house. Dmitry requested that they take the child that was present out of the house, a proposal that the intruder agreed to. Then, according to Markevius's account, the gunman went upstairs with Euri briefly while he forced the other two men to remain on the lower level. He came down once to demand car keys from Dmitry, who handed over the keys to a white Dodge Charger. The masked man then entered the bedroom on his own. Markevius stood with his brother-in-law outside of the room, Dmitry downstairs. They listened while a gunshot rang out from the bedroom. A moment later, the masked man left the house, then drove off in the Dodge Charger. Markevius phoned 911. Makeva's family suspected that they knew what had led to the young businesswoman's death: her social media posts displaying her success. 2 days prior to the masked man breaking into her home, Makeva had posted a short biographical post to her Facebook page, one that offered both personal and financial details. Makeva's approach to her live video postings for her business and her social media in general were very open and honest. These made her relatable, but also gave her credibility because she could speak to her own success. But in this last post, Makeva may have gone too far. A few years before, she turned down a business course because she couldn't afford the $99 fee. She wrote, "I am in awe of how far I've come. Fast forward to now, we overcame being homeless in 2013 and 14 to reaching my six-figure mark in 2015 to now making multi-six figures." In the immediate aftermath of her killing, family began to wonder if it could be a coincidence that so soon after posting about her financial success, that a masked man broke into her home. Euri spoke with media in the days following the incident. The grieving husband tried his best to convey what kind of a person Makeva was and what she meant to him.
She was a good mother. She kept me level.
How do you want people to remember Makeva?
She was an entrepreneur. She was that.
I mean,
I'm an entrepreneur, and we just clicked together. We used to call ourselves Jay-Z and Beyonce, a power couple.
Euri was asked about the negative stories that had emerged after the attack. Speculation that Makeva's boasting about her success online had been the impetus for the masked man to break into the house.
Honestly, everybody can go to hell. My wife was a good wife. She was a good mom. She was an entrepreneur. She came from nothing to something.
Investigators had one good lead: the white Dodge Charger that the masked man had driven from the scene of the murder. Detectives began collecting and scanning all available security cameras in the neighborhood and, of course, any that could have captured the house. They found a vehicle with two men entering the area around 2 a.m. and then the Charger was seen exiting the neighborhood approximately 18 minutes later. Outside of the area, investigators tracked the car traveling north away from the murder scene. Cameras tracked the Dodge Charger to a 3 to 4 block radius where they determined, based on surrounding cameras, that the car must have been left. The driver was presumably picked up by the darker unidentified vehicle that could be seen following behind it, but they thought it was also possible the intruder then fled on foot. None of the cameras captured the men in these vehicles clearly enough to identify them. However, within the few blocks to where the car was tracked, it was found abandoned. Inside it, officers saw the keys and a black t-shirt. Recognizing that vehicle was central to locating Makeva's killer, lead detective Sean Oliver of the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office made a plea to the public for any information on the car and its driver.
We do have something specific that we're asking the public if they saw something at a particular time, and that is because the suspect, after murdering Makeva, left the scene in a white Dodge Charger. He abandoned the Charger on Lawrence Road, just south of Pensacola, which is about 0.9 miles from the scene. We believe that either that person left on foot, had a car waiting for them, and we are just asking that anyone in that area between the hours of 1:50 in the morning and 2:20 in the morning on June 29th, which is a Thursday. If they saw a car on the shoulder of the road, if they saw anyone walking, please call the sheriff's office.
Despite the potential of the rental car lead, it failed to deliver a prime suspect. However, the stories of what happened that night told to the police by the three men came under intense scrutiny. Detective Oliver questioned the likelihood that this attack was motivated by Makeva's social media, and indeed, if it was, the killer was still likely to be someone personally connected to her. Dimitri Dale came under the most scrutiny. Curiously, Dimitri had arrived at the Jenkins house that night only minutes before the masked man, and the police believed that this man must have had assistance reaching the house that night, as he managed to flee after the murder only by stealing the family vehicle. The big break finally came months later when Dimitri Dale, under suspicion of being involved and facing murder charges, finally decided to cooperate with the police. He directed the investigators' attention to a 19-year-old acquaintance of his named Jovan Joseph. Jovan, Dimitri said, had been tight on cash and so was convinced to break into the Jenkins home. The 19-year-old was then arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Jovan initially denied any involvement. Possessions of value had been left in plain sight throughout the house. Even Makeva's laptop and other electronics were left directly next to her. Aside from the promptly abandoned rental car, the masked man left with nothing of value. The story that Dimitri told, however, was not one of a burglary gone wrong, but of a murder for hire. Euri Jenkins, the distraught, grieving husband, was behind the murder of his wife. Dimitri said Euri was no longer in love with his wife, and he believed he would benefit financially if she was dead. Dimitri said that he had arranged for Jovan and Euri to meet the day before the murder. An initial deposit had been made, and the plan was set.
Euri, did you kill your wife?
No, I didn't.
You said you were innocent.
I am innocent.
Well, then what happened?
God will vindicate me.
What do you have to say about this, Euri?
Listen, bull. God will vindicate me.
Say you're innocent?
I'm innocent. Yes, I am.
Euri Jenkins was indicted for first-degree murder in December 2017. He spoke voluntarily with investigators for 2 hours. He maintained his innocence throughout and denied any knowledge of Jovan's plan to shoot his wife. He had been introduced to Jovan, he said. He had seen the man sitting on his couch, but they had nothing to do with each other and they never discussed a murder. Euri pled not guilty, and the case was set for trial. Jury selection was anticipated to begin in the summer of 2019, but on the day that this was due to take place, another development unfolded. Jovan had agreed to a deal with state prosecutors. He pleaded guilty to a charge of second-degree murder. He agreed to testify against Euri at trial, and in exchange, he would receive a significantly reduced sentence.
Jovan Joseph just got probably one of the sweetest deals I've seen in a homicide case in the 34 years I'm a criminal defense attorney. Theoretically, the judge can give him as little as 5 years in the Department of Corrections, and the most he can get is 20 years in the Department of Corrections. The state waived any mandatory minimum sentence. I mean, Jovan Joseph is accused of shooting this young woman in the head at point-blank range and killing her. And he's going to serve at worst 17 and a half years in prison once we get rid of gain time, when he was looking at 25 years to life before.
Jovan had told detectives that Euri paid him $1,500 up front for the killing. Another $10,000 would be owed to him after the deed was done. Jovan said he purchased the gun used from a friend for $60, dressed in black clothing, wrapped a t-shirt around his head as a face mask. Once in the house, Euri showed him to where Makeva was sleeping. He walked up, took aim, and pulled the trigger. Both Dimitri Dale and Jovan Joseph were set to be key witnesses at trial. In January 2020, an initial attempt at the prosecution ended in a mistrial after jurors were told by Makeva's mother outside of court that Euri was absolutely, inarguably guilty. COVID pandemic delays meant that Euri would not face another jury of his peers until spring 2022. By then, the key witness testimony was showing some cracks.
You're going to hear that Dimitri Dale gave a statement on June 30th of 2017. You're going to hear that he gave another statement on August 14th of 2017. You're going to hear that he gave another statement in October of 2014. He was doing giving all kinds of statements, making all kinds of statements that were consistently inconsistent with each other. They have to testify to the satisfaction of the government, of the prosecution. They have to testify in a way that convinces the prosecution that they are being truthful, despite the fact that they are both admitted liars, despite the fact that they have a history of not telling the truth, despite swearing to tell the truth, despite the fact that neither of them can agree on what allegedly happened, or at least the story that they're supposed to be telling about what happened.
When Jovan took the stand, he told the jury he was paid $10,000 upfront from Euri, not $1,500 as he had told investigators. He further told investigators that Dmitry had also received cash for his role in the plan. A stack of cash was handed to Dmitry from Euri, he said, a statement that directly contradicted what Dmitry had told the police of his involvement.
And on that day, you said this was right before you were leaving, is when you got paid the money, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were sitting in the car is what you testified?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Jenkins handed you $10,000 in cash?
Yes, sir.
And isn't it true he also handed $10,000 in cash to Mr. Dale?
That's what I assume, yes.
Well, he handed a pile of cash to Mr. Dale.
Yes, sir.
You didn't count Mr. Dale's cash, right?
Yes, sir.
But you assumed it was the same amount as yours?
Yes, sir.
Because they're about the same height? Were the stacks about the same size?
Well, I don't know, sir.
You didn't look at the money he got?
No, sir.
But you looked at the money you got, right?
Yes, sir.
And you testified they were all hundreds, right?
I don't remember, sir.
You don't remember if they were all $100 bills?
You asking me, you said that I testified it was all $100.
No, I'm asking you right now, were they all $100 bills?
I don't remember, sir.
You don't remember?
No, sir.
Text messages between Dmitry and Jovan showed the men discussing how they were both struggling financially, only days after each had apparently received large payments from Euri. Euri's defense raised questions as to whether these payments had ever actually been made.
Is that a text message that you're familiar with?
Yes, sir.
And that's a text message you sent to Mr. Dale, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that text message you say, bro, bring me 20, I need it for gas, meet me somewhere, that's correct?
Yes, sir.
So that's about 3 days after you got $10,000 in cash, you need money for gas.
Yes, sir.
So let me show you one more text while I'm up here. July 2nd, 2017 at 12:54 p.m. That's about 5 minutes after your text. Do you recognize that message?
Yes, sir.
And that's a message from Mr. Dale to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he replies, I have no money, bro. I'm broke and I'm bringing this car back, correct?
That's Dale, or does that mean?
Dale to you, correct? That's his response to you saying, give me 20 bucks. He's saying, I don't have any, I'm broke. Is that correct?
What date was that, sir?
The same day, July 2nd, 2017. About 5 minutes after your text.
Yes, sir.
You remember that?
Yes, sir.
So he doesn't have any money left, according to this either, correct?
Dale?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Further discrepancies existed between Jovan and Dmitry's testimony regarding the gun used in the murder. Dmitry Dale testified that the gun used by Jovan had been provided directly by Euri, or so he believed from the conversations they had held. But again, his accomplice Jovan told a different story. He testified that he had purchased the gun himself, a revolver, based on the suggestion of Dmitry Dale.
When you got that money at that time, you didn't have the gun yet, correct? The revolver?
No, sir.
In fact, you went from Mr. Jenkins' house to find Snakebird to get the gun?
Yes, sir.
And whose idea was it to get a revolver?
Dale's idea.
And why did he say to get a revolver?
It leaves no shells.
Leaves no shells? You know, what does that mean to you, leaves no shells?
It's not enough evidence for the police to collect.
Like the cartridge, when you shoot the gun, it doesn't leave a shell on the floor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Dale's the one who explained that to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
You gave him one of those $100 bills that you had from Mr. Jenkins?
I don't know if it was, I don't know how much I paid for it, sir.
Well, how much was the gun?
I didn't pay 100 for it. I know I ain't
Yeah.
pay 100 for it.
If you testified before that the gun was $60, does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
And when you gave him 100, he gave you back change?
Yes, sir.
This is a drug dealer that provides change.
Despite the uncertainty in Jovan's testimony and the contradictions in stories being told, both key witnesses nonetheless provided damning details of the murder plot. Jovan told jurors how the three had held a brainstorming session the day before to explore ideas of how to kill Makeva. They discussed the possibility of killing her at work, of getting into a traffic accident, and of potentially staging an attack that appeared to target both her and Euri. Dmitry outlined the agreement arranged with Euri and Jovan.
So I ask you these questions, Mr. Dale. Did this defendant, Euri Jenkins, did he give you, Jovan Joseph, access to his house on June 29th, 2017 in the early morning hours?
He did.
Did this defendant tell you that he wanted his wife killed?
Objection leading.
Judge, do you want, I'm asking him,
I'm
did
not
he?
overruling the question of that question.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Did this defendant tell you that he wanted his wife killed?
He did.
Did this defendant have a discussion with you and Jovan Joseph about killing his wife?
Objection leading. Overruled. He did.
Did this defendant ask you to bring Jovan Joseph back to his house during the early morning hours of June 29th, 2017?
He did.
The third man that had been in the house that night, Markavius, Makeva's brother, took the stand to outline what he had observed. It was the fourth day of the trial. Overwhelmed by the testimony given up to that point, Markavius took a detour on his way to the witness stand. And he walked straight towards his former brother-in-law before being intercepted by court bailiffs, held back, and then escorted out of the courtroom.
I want to start by apologizing to the judge, and I want to apologize for my actions and how I disrupted everything. He tell us not to move, get down on the ground and don't move.
Okay, now are you able to have any type of conversation with the defendant while you both are lying down on the ground?
Yes.
What are you both, or who's saying what to whom?
I told him that, hey, isn't that your friend from earlier that day that came? He told me no. And then it went on to say that, hey, we need to do something about this, yo. We can't just let this man come in here and do whatever he want to do. You know, we live here, the kids here, we got to do something. We can't just sit here.
So you both are down on the ground, you're somewhat whispering to each other, and the gunman is making his way over to that hallway to the left where your sister is asleep in her room?
Yes.
And you said you're thinking, you asked him, is that your friend or the guy who came over earlier?
Yes.
Now, which friend are you referring to? Are you talking about the guy that came over with Dmitry Dale or someone else?
The one that came over with Dmitry Dale.
Okay. And the defendant told you that that was not him?
Yes. I heard the gun go off.
How many times did you hear the gun go off?
One time.
And after the gun went off, what did the gunman do?
He sprinted out. He ran out the room as if he was, in a track meet.
Phone records and witness statements showed that Makeva had told her husband in the days before her death that she wanted a divorce. She had been pursuing this option in May, only weeks before the murder, before having a change of heart when she learned that she was pregnant. In addition, Makeva had a life insurance policy for $500,000. Prosecutors argued that this payout was central to Euri's motivation to have his wife killed. There were two policies, one of much less value, and Euri believed that both had been moved into his name. Days after the murder, while making arrangements for Makeva's funeral, Euri rang the insurance provider to confirm the beneficiary information on the $500,000 policy. Euri was informed only after Makeva had been killed that he was not named on the insurance policy at all. Makeva had instead named her grandmother as the sole beneficiary.
Okay, and I am sorry for your loss, sir. Let me get you over to our life benefits area, and they'll be able to help you.
Is it the kid? Euri Jenkins or Sanaya King or the Zoe Jenkins?
Unfortunately, I can't disclose that.
This case is about lies and liars. Plain and simple. It is the burden of the government to provide you with truthful, honest, sworn testimony.
He was there to take one thing only, and that was to snatch the life of Makeva Jenkins. He was there to complete the job that the defendant asked him to do. And he either received $1,500 or $10,000, and he was promised additional money. 28 days before her death, that the one policy was changed, and he assumed that the second policy had been changed also.
Euri Jenkins was found guilty of first-degree murder in May 2022. Circuit Court Judge Kirk Voker immediately sentenced Jenkins to life in prison.
We, the jury, find as follows. As to count 1, we find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment.
For his part in plotting Makeva's murder, Dimitri Dale was sentenced to 45 days in jail and probation. Although he was originally indicted for first-degree murder in 2020, which could have carried a potential life sentence without the possibility of parole, Dimitri's cooperation ultimately earned him the lesser charge of manslaughter with a weapon. Dimitri testified and then was released on 15 years probation. A few weeks after Euri's conviction, Jovan Joseph was sentenced to 15 years in prison for pulling the trigger in exchange for either $1,500 or $10,000. He was given credit for the nearly 5 years that he had already spent detained to that point. After the trial, defense attorney Greg Lerman filed a motion for the court to either vacate the verdict or order a new trial, arguing that the state allowed contradictory and improper testimony from both Dimitri and Jovan. This motion was denied. As of taping, Euri's appeal is pending. He maintains his innocence.
Hey, I'm Makeva with the Prime Enterprise Group. Welcome. I'm here to talk about business. I wish I had that kind of personality. All right, I gotta go pick these kids up from school. Mommy duties are calling. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
And that was the tragic story of Makeva Jenkins. Thanks for joining me once again. I'm Kevin. This is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.